it's easier for me to talk to you at first about what this class is not going to be. He says, I was going to make you wealthy. I can't do that. I can give you some suggestions, and I'm going to do it at a real high level because this quarter we've got 4 different periods of time where this class will not be meeting. So I've really only got time for me to deliver 8 lessons. And the third class, 2 weeks from today, I'd already planned on being on vacation. And I'm going to be in Alaska, but Jack Reese is going to be teaching a lesson that day on the parable of the talents. And that is a very, very important parable in that it sort of will guide us from that point forward in the class to where we need. It is not intended to be a cloning of financial peace, the Dave Ramsey program, though it does use a lot of the same skills and suggestions in doing that. And you may think, well, I've been managing my household finances for years. And let me ask you a few questions. How many of you are facing inflation? Okay. How many of you anticipate recession in the next several months? How many of you have people coming into your home to live with you who moved out? How many of you have new children coming into your homes? How many of you anticipate medical issues? How many of you anticipate that you might even have to face a life without your partner? How many of you have possibility of having your job cease to exist? Mergers. Oh, that's one of the 3 biggest lies. The check's in the mail, I'll respect you in the morning, and everything will be the same after the merger. It is one of those situations where life happens. And once you set up a budget or a plan for your finances, you better be prepared to visit it pretty regularly. Because if you don't, life will overtake you. So what started me down this path was I was thinking about what is the thing that's causing the most problems in our society. There are divorces, largely or sizably driven by financial stress. People who get sick and start being addicted to drugs because they try to self-medicate because their finances are awry. People are filing bankruptcy and defaulting on debt. I mean, really, society needs the cure. And the last time I looked, we're all part of that society. So hopefully this will be a way to start it. I found this book, and it's about 12 years old, maybe a little longer, called 30 Days to Taming Your Finances. And it's biblically oriented, and this class will be loosely arranged around this book. I bought you copies of this book, okay? And because I don't know how many of you there are, I ordered 40 of them. But I'm also fearful that maybe we'll have some other folks join the class later when they finally figure out I'm not begging for the church. So I'd ask that you take one per family unit so that I can do that. And I'm going to leave the box up here so that you can get them after class because you're really not going to need it this morning. The other thing is, yes?
If we want to buy one from you,
I'll give it to you. No, listen, I bought them at a great discount, okay? So I would be ashamed to ask you for the little bit I paid for them, but I did get them. I've got homework. We'll talk about that last. every family unit will need a folder. Yeah, there's a catch. I want everybody to succeed. I'm selfish like that, okay? I want you all to succeed. In fact, God wants us to succeed. And that's really the most important thing about this whole process. Now, the question is, did I turn this on or have I yet to do it? Okay, we want to know the purpose of the class. We're trying to organize our financial lives. Okay, that's really all this class is about, organizing our financial lives. But in that concept of organization, we got to set priorities. Some things you want to do, some things you don't want to do. We've got to create a plan for living our financial lives. Alan Halstead a few months ago said, if you fail to plan, then you're planning to fail. He actually got that from some guy who was very, very old back in France, as I recall. But that's what we're trying to do. And we're also trying to do this within the principles that are taught in the Bible. That's a very, very key part of this. One thing that I've struggled with all my life is weight. And while this class is not going to be a perpetual class, there's going to be availability for you to have accountability groups. So think about that. The thing that was most helpful to me was going to my Weight Watchers meeting. Even if I gained weight, it was okay. And these can be structured in small groups, if you'd like to have that way, or one-on-one sessions. We can talk about setting you up one-on-one sessions after we've done our homework, because doing the homework first is going to be necessary before we can go down that step. So we got to agree on some basic stuff, okay? If we can't agree on this, we're not going to come to success. Do we all agree that we came into this world with nothing? I want to know who came in fully dressed. Anybody? No? So we came in the world with nothing? When we leave this world, we're not going to be able to take anything with us. Can we all agree on that? All right, if we're okay, some successful so far. We've got agreement. God created everything, and without him, nothing would exist. We all agree on that. Good. So if God created everything, doesn't it follow that everything belongs to God? Did he give it to you? Did he deed it to you? Did he sign it over to you? Or did he merely ask you to take care of it? That's really what the things we have to agree upon. God created everything, and without him nothing would exist. And God owns everything. So when you wreck your car, tell the police officer, it's not mine. Don't do that. God created man to work. It says in Genesis 2 that the Lord God took man and put him in the Garden of Eden to work and take care of it. That's before the apple. That is before the fall. God intended us to work and take care of his garden. Therefore, by going forward, it goes on to say everything that he has given us, he expects us to take good care of. We need to be prepared to take care of things. So let's look at a passage from Ecclesiastes. Solomon said, A feast is made for laughter, wine for making merry, and money is the answer for everything. Now remember, he's supposed to be the wisest dude that ever lived, okay? So how do you view that passage? Particularly, how do you view that phrase? Come on, it's your turn to talk. How do you view the phrase, money is the answer for everything? Tell me what you can do without financial resources. You can pray. You can pray. You can donate your time. What else can you do, though? It's pretty tough. There is a limited number of things that you can do without money. But the problem is not the money. It's our relationship with money. 1 Timothy 6, verse 10. Well, the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. Some people, eager for money, have wandered from the faith and pierced themselves with many griefs. Hebrews writer says in chapter 13, keep your lives free from the love of money and be content with what you have, because God has said, never will I leave you, never will I forsake you. Would it surprise you to know that Jesus spoke more about finance than he did about heaven and hell? He talked about, in the Sermon on the Mount, not being worried about what your needs would be. He's promised us. He's promised us that he's going to provide for what we need. Now, let's reconsider. What is it that we need? I sure don't need an extra Whataburger. I sure don't need 2 cars. I could get by with one if I had to. And if I was willing to walk and was in better shape, I could do without one. We're not promised that he's going to provide us our excesses, our extravagances. He's promised to take care of what we need. Therefore, maybe we ought to be considering whether or not what we have is taking over our lives and become the idols that we bow down to. Money can be a two-edged sword. It can be good. It can be used for good, and when we maintain a proper attitude. But we merely need to approach these money with no consideration of God in its use. We need to plan to use the money that God entrusts us, and we must remember everything that we have comes from him. James 1. Don't be deceived, dear brothers and sisters. Every good and perfect gift is from above, coming from the Father of heavenly lights, who does not change like shifting shadows. Everything you've got, every single thing you've got, everything you will get, everything you even hope to have comes from him. So, we need to consider some more passages. And I'm sorry about the red. It was red in the Bible I was quoting. I will do better next time. Somebody that doesn't have it in red, can you look up Luke 12, 16 through 21 for me? I got a volunteer out there? Okay, read it for us, please.
He then told them a parable. The land of a certain rich man produced an abundant crop. So he thought to himself, what should I do? For I have nowhere to store my crops. Then he said, I will do this. I will tear down my barns and build bigger ones, and there I will store all my grain and my goods. And I will say to myself, you have plenty of goods stored up for many years. Relax, eat, drink, and celebrate. But God said to him, you fool, this very night your life will be demanded So it is the one who stores up riches for himself, but is not rich toward God.
So what was the problem with the rich man? What did he do wrong? What do you think he did wrong? Come on. I'll start calling on you if you don't volunteer. I'm sorry? He kept it all to himself. I don't know that that was necessarily wrong. He says he was more concerned about his personal well-being, obviously. He says, I'll tear down my barns and build bigger ones, and then I'll take life easy. Yeah, he was concerned with himself, and he wasn't concerned about others. He idolized it. He did like it a whole lot. I don't know that working on building barns is not a fun thing to do. I worked on a farm one summer. Don't make me go there. But he was concerned about his well-being. Think of it as the guy who has enough money when he retires to live on and live on and live on and live on. He can't take it with him. And if you leave it behind, the tax man's going to get it from somebody.
Well, there is a consideration of your dependence. I think most of us would like to be able to leave something to our children or maybe our grandchildren. That's legitimate, isn't it?
But you still haven't got to the real big problem. He took credit. He took credit for having money. Well, he did labor. But he did fail to recognize God in the process, I think. He did fail to recognize God in the process. That is one of his problems. Yes, sir.
He wasn't rich towards God.
Expound.
Well, he just thought about himself. He didn't share what he had with others, and he just kept accumulating and building. But he wasn't rich towards the Creator that had given it to him.
Ah.
Same thing.
I'm sorry?
He wasn't grateful.
He was ungrateful. Baby?
He didn't want to just believe in Jesus. He didn't want to believe what Jesus was telling him.
Okay. Ah, there we're getting close. Who said that? Self-reliant. Talk to me. What should he have done?
Well, I just know from my own life, it's so easy to look at what's in the retirement account, what's in the savings account, and when it gets lower, then I tend to get more stressed or anxious. When there's more in there, then I'm less strength.
Let me give you some life's stress can be reduced by saying, it's God's loss. God will return it if he wants you to have it. He failed to even consider God. He didn't even pray about his decision. He was so far removed from the process that he wasn't engaged with God. And God didn't like that. What do you call him? A fool. I don't want to be called a fool by God. There's bad things that come with that. He died that very night. He died that very night. So before you make any plan, the best thing you can plan to do is get on your knees. Okay? That's lesson number one. Lesson number one. Before I enter into a financial arrangement, I'm going to pray about it. You never heard a banker say that, have you? I know. I was one for 50 years. Oh, by the way, your book, it talks about people's failings. Self-confession. I have done them all. More than once. And likely it's all because I was not praying before I made decisions. If I had considered what God would have wanted, I may have made a better decision. That means that you're going to go into a car dealership to buy an automobile, and you're going to leave the parking lot. And the salesman's going to say, oh no, 70% of people who leave the parking lot never come back. And that's probably a true thing. But I guarantee you, that 70% ain't going home to pray. Some will. But the truth is, you might not need what they're selling. Oh, and unlike some other people who teach classes like this, I'm not selling anything. I'm not selling a thing. I don't want to sell a thing. I've done that. And I always tried to do it in a way that I was trying to fit needs. It's one of the reasons I got out of the for-profit side and went to the non-profit side. But we got to do what's right first by praying and considering what we can need. Got to align our plans with the wishes of God. Can you think of another example where somebody did something in the Bible without considering God's wishes? Laura? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Ananias and Sapphira. Yep, that's all I got for that land. Paid the ultimate price, right? You don't lie to God or any of his people, really. And that speaks to another thing that this class is going to try to really get you to focus on. And that's having a relationship of integrity with your brothers and sisters, but also with those who you don't worship, all those that you do business with. You got to have a level of integrity. Integrity doesn't mean you're not going to be late sometimes. Stuff happens. People get laid off. Unexpected sicknesses and expenses come. That happens. But you will talk to them. You won't just let the phone ring and the letters pile up. You don't close your eyes. You deal with it on an integrity basis. That's what God would want you to do. We are to commit to the Lord what we will do. He will establish your plans. What sorrow awaits my rebellious children, says the Lord. You make plans that are contrary to mine. You make alliances not directed by my spirit, thus piling up your sins. In this particular case, he was talking about alliances made between a king and another person, another king, and he didn't think that was appropriate. You'll read about that in the book. Now let's try to talk about our end game here. We need to vision where we want to be. Stories told about a preacher who was really giving a hard fire and brimstone sermon, and he was asking the congregation as he raised the lather of their fervor, and he says, how many of you want to go to heaven? And all of them except one little old lady in the back raised their hands. And then he asked it again, and the same little old lady didn't raise her hand. And he goes at it a third time, raising the crowd's intensity, and says, who wants to go to heaven? And she doesn't raise her hand. And he just walks down to her and says, "Why didn't you raise your hand?" She said, "I thought you were getting a busload to go right now." You know, we need to be thoughtful and we need to be concerned about what we're going to do and when it's going to happen. God is in control of our lives. We need to all want to go to heaven. We really all need to want to go to heaven. But maybe her account in God's treasury was a bit empty. We all contribute to God's treasury with our lives and with the way that we administer the resources that He gives to us to administer. Evidently, this congregation is having some issues in its administration by not having as much money come in as has come in the past. There's a lot of things that the elders are having to make tough decisions about, but you know, when it all boils down to it, we each have to make tough decisions about our own personal finances. You're going to be asked to develop for yourself a plan that has both short and long-term goals. The short-term goals are not all supposed to be money related. At least not hard money related. One goal might be, I'm going to pray daily to God to help me be better in administering the resources that I have. And I'm going to do that by keeping a journal. And I'm going to ask Him to point me to a way that allows me to be better in administering the resources He gives me to handle. A longer term goal might be, I've got to get my heart right about what my desires are. I see people in here who are, a lot of you, or most of you are my age, maybe a few of you are younger, but not many. How many of you remember the Temptations? Everybody remember the group, the Temptations? What do you remember about the Temptations? You remember their songs? I remember their songs. I've got the greatest hits on my phone. I've got the vinyl record at the house. I've even got it on something that they don't even make anymore called an iPod. I even have a CD. They don't make those anymore either, do they? And they certainly don't make 8-tracks, and I've got those too. Why do I have all that stuff? You know, they had a song, came out in 1969. I believe it was before some of their better known hits, but it's called Don't Let the Joneses Get You Down. How many of you remember Don't Let the Joneses Get You Down? My wife knows it because I play it all the time. I was playing it for a day trying to get it into the video here, and I couldn't do it. But the whole idea behind that song was, you know, just because somebody else has something, I don't necessarily have to have it. Oh, that's the same group that sang about doing drugs too, didn't they? They weren't all bad. There was a silver lining with Don't Let the Joneses Get You Down. Goals must be specific and time sensitive, and some can be. I'm going to pay off my credit cards in the next 3 years and never not go a month without paying them off. It's not bad to have a credit card. It's a vehicle for payment. But it's intent that gets you in trouble. I intend to do it, but then something else gets in front of me on my priorities. set your plan, stick to it. Short-term goals, long-term goals. Goals have to be reviewed periodically. How many of you were ready for COVID 2000? You were ready. Good. You had a shot in advance or what? No? Just a healthy metabolism. You're lucky. I'm old. It's not so good with being old. Right, sisters, brothers? It's not so good being old. But most folks were just not ready for what happened. I know that one day I get a call. I'm sitting eating breakfast with my wife, and the phone rings in my pocket, and it's the person who's over my branches, and she says, somebody's sick and they've got COVID. This was right at the 1st of March in 2000, and this lady was the first person in San Antonio to get sick down at Northside Mall. And this person had gone shopping, and she was down there with that person, one of my employees. Well, she calls in, and she doesn't talk to her manager. She talks to a fellow coworker. And we were to open at 9 o'clock. Before 10 o'clock, all of them were getting ready to walk out because they were afraid. Now tell me something. I never managed people who were so fearful they were afraid to go to work before. I wasn't ready for that experience. There are experiences that you will encounter that you're not ready for, and you don't even know what they are right now. You must review your plans as circumstances change. You must do that. Some of you are retired. Had to change the plan. You used to get a paycheck every 2 weeks. It was a whole lot bigger than what I didn't get, because I didn't start drawing my Social Security until 3 months ago, and I've been retired for 2 years. I had to live off my savings for a while. That was okay. I had planned for that, but I wasn't ready for the things that I wanted to do to get in the way. Circumstances change. If you have children who are adults and they become in unfortunate circumstances, they may have to move home with you. That will change the family dynamic, and it will change your expenses. Or maybe you've been a little generous with buying stuff for you, things you really don't need, but really would like to have. And you're finding it hard to meet payments. You're one of those that they describe as living paycheck to paycheck. If that's your circumstances, then you need to review what you're doing. What are you spending? How much are you getting in? And then you've got to make prayerful decisions about what you're going to do to fix it. Advancing toward your goal is more important than meeting a deadline. You know what's wrong with being a CEO? You don't answer to one person. I had a board of directors that I had to tell them what I was doing and why I was doing it. And when it came time for evaluating my performance, there were 9 people who were trying to decide whether I was doing a good job or not. You've never lived until you tried to satisfy 9 people who can fire you. I've had to, on more than one occasion, tell them I postponed the execution of a particular project because if we tried to stay on their schedule, all sorts of bad things were going to happen. The computers weren't going to work. Members weren't going to be able to make phone calls in. You ask them, what would you have done? And they say, well, why did you set the date? I said, you're the one that set the date. It's more important to advance towards the ultimate goal than it is to adhere to a strict timeline. That does not mean, though, you don't go and try. Last January, the doctor told me, you're way fat, Bob, way fat. In fact, he had me go test, and I was pre-diabetic, and he says, got to get off those carbs. I had not weighed myself, but once a year when I went to have my annual physical. And I would tell my wife, she says, why don't you want to go to the doctor? I said, he's going to tell me the same thing, what I already know. But he scared me this time. And I've been weighing daily now. I try to know if I'm staying on course. Now, maybe that's a little excessive, but I don't have anything else to do now. I'm retired. Now, the fun part begins. Let's see here. Why don't you help me here, Barry? On the back of the folders, just take one, pass them around. Try to also keep these to the household because I don't have as many of these. And you're going to work together as a family unit in doing this. So take one for your family unit. And then when the last person's got theirs, if you'll let me know by saying, okay, all right. There are papers on both sides. And you'll know the back is the one that's got the little label on it. So when you open it up, on the left side, as you're looking at the folder, there's a couple of forms in there called financial compatibility. There should be 2 of them. Okay? You and your household partner. Everybody got one? Anybody need one? Oh. Okay. All right, we good? Everybody got one? Okay. Financial compatibility. This is in the book, but it's also something that premarital counselors who are getting ready to marry people will go through just to see what people's values are, and they'll ask a lot of different questions. These are financially oriented. I want you to sit down individually with a pencil, one that can be erased. All right? With a pencil. And each of you in the family unit fill one of these out. Then, after you've done that, get together and compare them. If you don't do this homework, you will not get the benefit of understanding why you're where you are. How many of you, just households, how many of you have households that have multiple checking accounts? His, hers, and ours. Okay, all right. Who controls the checking accounts? Who controls the checking accounts? Do you have all the checkbooks, Paul?
No.
Oh, okay. Does she have all the checkbooks? Oh, okay. It's a joint effort, right?
Well, yes and no.
When I was working, my wife had her own checking account, and I had the checking account that I used for the household. And I gave her money to buy groceries and stuff. And then I told her, I said, whatever you don't spend, you're not accountable for. She loved it. And that went away when I retired. We now have a joint account, and she has a credit card that she doesn't have to ask me what she spends it for. Okay? But that's okay. We know each other and communicate better than most, I guess. She's concerned about me being angry, which sometimes I get. But anyway, you need to fill that out and have a discussion. That one I want you to have done before next week, because I want to hear about your discussion. You can take all of the rancor out of it, though. That's fine. The next thing on that same side, there are 4 weekly sheets to fill out what you spend that is not fixed expenses. Like if you go out to eat lunch at work, write down how much you spend for lunch every day. If you are going to go to a movie and you don't plan to go to a movie, or you don't have set a budget for movies or something like that, put down what you spent. These are variable expenses. Things, it's not your car payment or your mortgage payment. Those things are regular recurring things, and you should be very well aware of those. I want you to concentrate on the things that you don't see. This is where the leakage in your finances is, okay? And there are 4 sheets because I want you to fill them out for 4 weeks, okay? Starting tomorrow. And you both need to fill it out together if you've got more than one in the family unit. No secrets. No secrets. Why do we want to do that? At the end of 4 weeks, we're going to start building an income statement and a balance sheet for you so that we can get a clear picture. And you're not going to show anybody in this room, unless you want to. That's your business, not mine. You're not going to be asked to show it to anybody except the person who helped you fill it out, okay? It's totally for you. But it will be a very eye-opening experience for some of you. You will find out where you're overspending, and you will find out what may need to be fixed. And that will be a launching point for us to talk about things that you can possibly do to get things straightened out. Now, next week, we're going to talk about saving. Or really, no, it's not saving. It's putting priorities first, okay? It's first things first is what it's all about. I'm actually 2 minutes over. I apologize for that. But I got a late start. But we made up a little time with the brevity of the prayer requests. Next week, pray about it, all right? Thank you all.